Hey RVers, today we are doing a video about how to use the Dicor EPDM roof coating system to redo your Dicor roof. So after about 15 years, these roofs, even less than that, start to chalk, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But when they chalk, what happens is they become sort of dusty, and you can start to see fibers through them. So what we don't want to do is let that deteriorate to the point where the fibers break down. So our roof is still totally salvageable, and that's why we're going to do this process today. So today we are doing this project on my beloved 21 RBH, which is by RVision. It's from 2006. And this, although I'm doing it on my unit, applies to just about any trailer with an EPDM roof coating. So first, before we get up on the roof, we're gonna make sure that we have a few basic safety things in check. One, that we're wearing shoes that are tightly tied. Two, that we have put the stabilizer jacks down. And three, that our trailer is as level as possible. Mine is not quite perfectly level. That's the best I can get in my driveway. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go up onto the roof, and we are going to have a look at what we're gonna remove. Climbing up onto the roof, you will see that it is not in ideal condition. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is actually a prerequisite, and you wanna do this 2-3 weeks out, is you want to take off all the old caulking, and you want to lay a thin bead, sort of as thin as you can, but not too thin because then it bubbles. But you want to lay just, a decent layer. You can see what I did here, right? Not too thick. And you need to only let this cure for about a week or two. I let it cure for 4 weeks, and I took it on 2 trips. So it's definitely watertight. I'm not worried at all about it being watertight. And I did want to actually make sure it was super watertight before I took it and put the coating on. So now that I know that it's super watertight, all I'm doing is I'm just laying my layer on top. So climbing onto the roof, we can see a few things, right? We've got some obstructions. We've got a solar panel. We've got our crank antenna. And we've got some old lap sealant here, but it's in pretty good shape. And that lap sealant I just did last fall. So there would be some schools of thought that would say, take all of that stuff off. Personally, I'm not going to, because it's just not necessary in this case. So this is not layer on layer of lap sealant over here. This is a big thick coat that I did. And then I did this solar panel. So removing things. First, we are going to stand our antenna up. Okay. Second, we're going to take our roof vent off. We're going to stand our radio antenna up. And then we are I've got a max fan here. You'll notice I don't have an air conditioning unit. If you have an AC unit, you're gonna unbolt the cowling, the covering for that, and you are going to remove that. Now for me, I've just got a max fan, and I use a window shaker, personal preference. So I'm not gonna touch this. I am, however, gonna remove the solar panel, but not the brackets that I've Dicored into place. So I'm gonna do that, and I'll show you what we're at. Okay, so I'm back on the roof, and we're going to basically zip off the solar panel I installed last year. So the first thing, if you've got a solar panel on your roof, you're gonna have to disconnect your charge controller wherever that is. Then the next thing you're going to have to do, and there's 2 ways of doing this, but I would do the easiest possible way, which in my case is just removing these bolts that actually go into the panel itself. And mine is hardwired, so I'm gonna have to snip it and then connect some butt connectors after. It's just really not worth the trouble of trying to take all of these guys out, because these are already holes in the roof, and anything that's a hole in the roof you don't want to take out, right? If it's not broken, don't mess with it. What this is going to do is add an extra protection on top of your already solid sealant. So I'll zip this off, and then in case you're wondering why we took the solar panel off, well, you can see here the end that I clipped, and solar panels are really low to the roof surface, so this is the kind of stuff that accumulates, and so we're glad that we took that off. On the rest of the roof, you can see over here that we've taken off Now that we've removed all of the things that were taking up space on the roof, you can see that we have opened up a lot more of the die-core that you can see. So this guy, again, I did fresh die-core all the way around it because it was pretty messed up, but everything else was in good shape. So now we're going to take all this stuff off the roof, and we get to do the next really fun part, which is masking everything off. So with all of this stuff done, you've got all the extra stuff off, you've got the cowlings off, you've got the solar panel off, and you've got the fridge vent cover off. This is a good time to do a couple bonus things. Now remember, if you're going to do anything that involves lap sealant, you're locked in. You've got to stop and do another 2 weeks of curing. But you can do stuff, and I'm going to do this today. I'm going to paint my fridge vent cover with plastic paint because it looks ugly, but it's perfectly intact. So, you know, why wouldn't I just do it while I'm here? I'm going to clean up this antenna a little bit while I'm here. Because, you know, it's already there and you're already into this. So the next thing that we're going to do, now that we've swept everything off, is we are going to tape the entire perimeter of the trailer off, and we're going to apply the cleaner activator that die-core provides, and we'll see when we do that. Up on the roof, I've discovered that masking the front and the back of the trailer is much easier from the top because it's easier to see this line. Keeping in mind you're masking for washing, not for painting. I personally prefer to paint freehand, but everybody else, you can do as you please. So the line that I've chosen basically is the edge of this trim piece here, and that's where I'm going to tape it. Now, of course, the wind's come up, so it's a little bit fun to tape right now. Time to get this done, and then I'll show you. If you ever watch my videos, you know how I feel about this implement, and I don't like power washers on RVs. However, die-core requires this as part of the system. So before I do the actual roof spray activator coating, I'm going to power wash it, because if I'm power washing it once, I'll do it twice. Let's give it a whirl. Now the roof is rinsed off, I'm back down on the ground, and I've got a quart of this. Now my vehicle is approximately 125 square feet of roof surface, maybe a little bit more, but I think I'll be able to stretch this. So I just took this, dumped it entirely into this sprayer. This is the kind of sprayer that you want to use. These are a couple bucks, probably about $20 at a hardware store. They're useful for lots of other things too. Pump it up to build pressure, and once it's ready, it will spray. So I'm going to take this thing, strap it over my shoulder. Remembering that I added the step to the process, I decided it would be prudent to squeegee the roof off first. So I'm just going along and with my tiny, tiny squeegee, pushing the stuff away so that it doesn't dry on the surface. Then I'm going to give it 10-15 more minutes, and I am going to spray the activator. Now we're on the roof, we've got our sprayer, we pumped it up, and we are just going to lay a nice bead of circles We're going to do basically the whole roof like this. You're going to see bubbles on it. It'll look pretty good. And once you can see that the roof is wet, move on to the next section. Okay, now we can see it has started to dry. So we're leaving this stuff on for about 15 more minutes. By then it should be nice and dry. And then we're going to rinse all of the bubbles off, and it should give us a nice chalk-free surface upon which to paint. So I'm going to take this opportunity, and I'm going to go get my painting materials ready. You will need, in case you don't have them already, you're going to need a brush to cut in the corners. You are going to need a small pail or yogurt container to carry a little bit of the roof coating. You're going to need a roller, and you are also going to need a couple of rags. So climbing back on the roof, it's been sitting for 20 minutes, and we are going to start spraying off. Now, what you have to do is spray the roof until there are no visible bubbles. So you can see here, the water's starting to run clear, still a few. You got to give it a good rinse. So you see the bubbles running down? So I'm going to get all of the bubbles off this roof. I'm going to rinse my way down, then rinse my way back, and then I'll see you in the next day. As part of this, I use trim-clad rust paint, which works great on plastic, to repaint my ugly fridge vent cover. And as you can see, it turned out pretty darn nice. So that's going to dry. It'll probably be dry by the time the rest of this is done. The roof is in pretty good shape, so I'm going to get my paint supplies and we're going to get going on the actual. So here is opening our can of Dicor EPDM. Now they say to stir it for 5 minutes. So I am going to stir this thing for 5 minutes before I start cutting in the corners. So this is coat 1. Now I should theoretically use this entire gallon in a 1 coat. That's what they want. So that's a gallon per every 125 square feet. Added thing, don't spill this. This is the most expensive gallon of paint ever. I think, and this is Canadian, I think this is like $146 for 1 gallon of this stuff. So this is another reason why you want to do this right, because if you screw it up, it's going to cost you a lot of money to do it again. See, in a few minutes, start cutting, right? And we're going to start cutting in this spot here. We kind of taped to the edge of the rail. So we're gonna move some pieces of tape and just make sure that we get right to the edge of the rail, because we want all of this totally covered in rubber, in nice clean rubber. So I'm just gonna redo some tape, make sure this edge is clean, and then I will apply the first coat of paint. So you can see the cut that I've applied there. We're gonna do the top after, but like how nice that is compared to this stuff. So we want to get to the edge of this sealant here and maybe go over the sealant even a little bit, just to make sure we got that entire mess taken care of. And I'll show you what this looks like. Again, far better, right? Look over here at this crusty stuff, and over here, much better. I'm also painting the edge right next to the fridge vent right now, because that is going to be a problem later. It's easier to access from here. So we're gonna do the edges on the sides, then we're gonna go up to the top. Okay, we are back on the roof and the heat of the day is slowly disappearing, which is good. We have our first coat on the sides done here. So now I'm gonna cut into the corners up here and over here and around all of the things that are intrusions into the roof line. And we will be back after that's done. So here's a bit of a technique break. This is how I do my lap sealant. Now, this is the old way I did my lap sealant, which is just applying it and letting it self-level. Now, new lap sealant technique, I use a sponge and I treat it like caulking. So I apply it and then I sponge it out with a wet sponge, very gently pulling it so it's relatively thin, but not too thin that it will bubble. Now, this is an old job. So what I'm gonna do here is be pretty generous on the roof coating, okay? So I'm gonna get in here and I'm just gonna absolutely slather it. Remember, you're applying a coating, not a paint, okay? So you're gonna go around that once and cover it again and get in the corners and basically try to push this stuff in where the seam meets the roof, okay? And then brush it out so it's about 1 brush length away from the antenna all the way around, And you can use this technique on all of your intrusions, but this way, when you do the lap sealant like this, the water will run off, and that's kind of what you want it to do, right? You want it to be away from the thing that is a hole in your roof and to channel toward the rest of the drainage points on your trailer. So now we have done the cutting in the corners, and we're gonna get the roller out. Now we're at roller time. This will go pretty quick. So we're gonna just take our Dicor, give it another stir, dump it into this. We're gonna work our way from the front to the back so that we leave ourselves a way out. So for roller technique, we are going to use quite a bit, okay? I'm guessing my first coat, I'm gonna be using probably more of the paint, of the sealant, and my second coat, I'm gonna be using less. So apply it thick, spread it out, and then when you roll, you're rolling toward the paint that you just put on and making sure that it's nice and even. Now, like when I put it on thin, it came out barely translucent, and that is not what we want. We want a good solid coating, or we came out decently translucent. Now we want a good solid coating, so we're going to go back over into this corner, and we're gonna just apply a little bit more, right? We don't want to see through this, even in the first coat. Now, if you can see a few flecks of black paint or of black, or of the old roof, you know, not really a huge problem, but that's what it's going to roughly look like. So when we get down and look at it, right, it looks pretty uniform. You can see the old roof next to it. If we get up really close, you can see like a few flecks, and that's not bad for our first coat. Our first coat, we're going for uniform and strong. The second coat, like any second coat of paint, will give us the real definition. Okay, so back on the roof, time for the second coat. All right, and sun going down. Looks like coating 2 is done. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow, but I'll see what it looks like after coating dry. And I am ripping down the trim right now. It's supposed to be clear and warm overnight, so that'll be perfect. We'll see where we're at tomorrow.